Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Race and the Law with Kiah Morris. My name is Serena Nelson, and I am the president of the Black Law Students Association here on campus. Oh, thank you. Race and the Law is an annual event we host it's a time for reflection and learning about the ways that race intersects with different areas of the law, whether that's in public service in the legislature, where Kiah served for several years, whether that's in the black letter law. It's all about seeing race in context and how it colors our experiences in day-to-day life and the way that the law works throughout our lives. I am so thankful that all of you are here and thankful for Kiah Morris, who's come. I've admired you for years. I don't think we discussed this when I met with you, but I have lived in Vermont for about 10 years. It'll be 11 years this August. And for 3 of those years, I served I was an elected official in the town of Woodstock on the board of village trustees. And it was a unique experience trying to balance staying safe, not trying to put myself in harm's way, but also do that radical change, make those changes, try to make change in the way things were run. So that is just one way in which race can play out in the law for those of us who have been elected officials. That's something just to keep in mind going forward. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Dean Lisa Ryan, and she is going to introduce Kiah Morris. So thank you, everyone.
Is this on? Okay. Good evening, everybody. As Serena said, my name's Lisa Ryan. I'm the Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Vermont Law and Graduate School, and I have the pleasure of introducing a dear friend and colleague, Kiah Morris. I'm going to read her bio. It's a little long because she is so incredible and accomplished. Originally from Chicago, Kiah Morris lives in Vermont, where she served in the General Assembly as a state representative from 2014 to 2016 and 2016 to 2018. She's the first African American and person of color elected from Bennington County and the second African American woman to be elected to the legislature in Vermont history. Her story of success and struggle has been covered internationally by over 40 media outlets, including CNN, The Huffington Post, The New York Times, The Washington Post, The Hill, Essence, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, PBS, BBC Radio, and Vice Media. She's an award-winning, in-demand trainer, speaker, and presenter. She provides consultative services, workshops, and presentations on diversity, equity, and leadership for organizations worldwide. Morris previously served as the executive director for Rights and Democracy Project in Vermont and New Hampshire. She's a former co-chair and commissioner for the Vermont Commission on Women and former appointee to the State of Vermont Environmental Justice Advisory Group. She currently serves as a Sisters on the Planet ambassador for Oxfam America, a board member of the Vermont Humanities Council, and a facilitator for the Vermont Environmental Justice Network. Morris also holds an accomplished artistic career as an actress on stage, film, television, spoken word performance, singer, dancer, and arts manager. As an arts advocate with a passion for community-based art, she has produced numerous special events, concerts, and art exhibits during her career. Her work focuses on amplifying voices of the oppressed, issues of human rights, and social justice. She is also the author of a recently published book of poetry, life lessons, and the lyrical translations of my soul. And she is currently directing and producing a docuseries on race in Vermont called Color Lines in the Green Mountains with Longshot Productions. Please join me in welcoming Kiah Morris.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Now, so I'm going to get a little short. I wore my heels, and now I'm going to sit. Just so you know, full disclosure, I am short, and I own that. So I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Dean Ryan. It is always an honor to hear your stories told. Sometimes we feel like we need to minimize what we've done. shorten up our accomplishments, try to play to people's attention spans, but the reality is that we are whole persons. And so it's a beautiful thing to be able to celebrate all of those parts of ourselves. So thank you for going on that journey with me. So this is the second time that I've had an opportunity to participate specifically in the Race and the Law series. I was a keynote speaker and a panelist a few years ago as well. And there's been quite a few thoughts that I've had with regards to both our role here in the United States, your role as students, as faculty, as members of the legal and judicial community at large, and what that means for our society as a whole. I'd like to take you on a journey. I have two things I'd like to share with you. So first, I have a beautiful keynote that I wrote, and I also have some poetry. And I feel that the poetry is important as well. I know this may not have been something that people expect. We're going to start off a conversation about the law, and we're going to begin it with a creative space. But this was a piece that I wrote while I was in the legislature, and I was dealing with incredible amounts of racial bias, gender-based bias within my workplace. And it really pushed me to a point where I was doing the 2.5 hours from Bennington in the blinding snow over mountain passes with tears streaming down my eyes. I don't recommend that. But from that came one of the most prominent pieces that I have that I think will encapsulate what you're going to hear from me today. Would you all be willing to go on that journey with me? All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of entertainment before I get to the edutainment. Okay, that's what we like to call it in Chicago, edutainment. So this piece is called Anthem. And it is from the book that Dean Ryan spoke about earlier. So give me just 1 second and we'll get there. I got to go to my own table of accountants. Okay, here we go. All right, thank you for your grace. My, you seem angry, white supremacy says with a snarky, sadistic grin as it presses its hand down upon my face, smothering my protesting mouth, covering my upturned nose and chin. See, this is the only way that business works. The business of world domination, and your submission is just part of a system of manipulation to ensure that you know your place in this nation, where your citizenship is conditional. Because there are no true birthrights to respect or acknowledgement of your humanity, firstly, because of your race. We owned you before you were born. A legacy and a system that has never seen you as truly human, equal to none and inferior to all. Inferior to all, so don't tell me that your life matters, girlie, because it doesn't. All lives matter, it says in an infantilizing tone. Not black lives, all lives matter, because acknowledging your place in this world requires a recognition of a unique human experience that we've determined is not worthy of notice. How dare you even breathe with such grace? Each conversation must be heated, dank, and heavy in order to be legitimate. A true bloody battle of words. Now, I was once told that you do not have to attend every argument that you are invited to, so why is my existence the site of so much spiritual warfare? But we will never fight fair, it says. We gleefully paint ourselves with your spilt blood as the victims of your inherent evil ways, your truth-telling, your interruption to our superior trains of thought. We will talk over you, dismiss your ideas, then repackage them as our own, as we're known to do. Call it diversity and profit richly on your name. And your hair is just a little too revolutionary. Corporate America chimes in with a sneer. It's so unkempt and so non-white. See, the test has come time and time again that promotions in my career sync perfectly at the times in which I move away from black hair to appropriate whiteness. See, I must prove my commitment to become fully assimilated, to ascend beyond. All of my hard work and accomplishments are still beholden to someone else's grace and willingness to give me what I have goddamn well earned. And I live in liminality, never sure that I fit whatever their tribal team fit, culture exclusionary, catchphrase, human races nonsense of the day that's going to dictate my professional marginalization. I just keep demanding entrance into the places they tell me I don't belong. And the gatekeepers, they hold tight the keys and smile as they're trained to do. And they review the terms of agreement that state, you will deserve but a penance and accept far less until you prove your worthiness to enter again and again. You will do more. You will make a way out of no way, and you will absorb the psychic baggage and the mental destruction that exclusion causes. See, you have been bred through slavery, unnatural selection, to have a superhuman ability to endure too much. You will dance. You will produce until your body collapses and your fingers bleed from the sweat equity of the Black American nightmare. And so I pulled the food from my child's mouth to pay the exorbitant price of admittance promised through degrees, accreditations, professional development, and deeper levels of commitment than anyone else is expected to give, because it was all conditional. It was all laid out in legalese. I just didn't read between the lines of the fine print over the social contract over my life. I trusted in the goodwill of the powerful, and now I am left spent, crushed, and quivering. And I fight back with the strength of 100 dark-skinned queens who held their tongue when they were called pretty for a Black girl. I speak louder with the conviction and the ferocity of 1,000 servant women who were told they were poor because they were lazy. I blatantly call out systems of oppression with the tactical acuity of women warriors like Nzinga, Tubman, Nanny, and Shakur, and they turn on me. They scream curses for disrupting their ignorance. They join in unison to say, "Foolish girl, it isn't us. It's you who has the problem. Your truth has wounded our pride, and you need to make us whole again." And I fight back tears, exhausted from so many daily battles. Tired and worn is what they want. My defeat is what they need. My acquiescence is what they seek to put things into their rightful order, but I cannot be beaten unless I accept it. I know that I must rage against this machine. No longer a conscientious objector to participating in this war. These ongoing battles for my soul here and now, and the agony that is within cannot be held back. I feel the dignity of my foremothers being pulled out of whack, my spine stacked high with historical memories of warriors and goddesses who bowed to no one. And thus begins my transformation into my authentic self. My skin tears with the graceful mask that I need to hide when I scraped off in desperation to expose raw flesh and complete lack of natural pride. And the blood rushes forth, my cheeks hot and reddened, my teeth grinding and clenching, gnashing and gnawing, the pinpoint precision of the drum cadence of my heart pounding through my temples. Eyes tired and weary, stinging, screaming, reddened, full of fiery rage, singing anthems to the top of my lungs, anthems to freedom, to rejection of the lies, to empowerment, long, hard sobs for hours, hours on end, tears, blinding tears, thousands of years in the making, until my throat cinches up like a vice and my body in all-consuming agony, and there is nowhere left to go than to leave this fallacy. I look at my complicity in fostering this repression. I see the carnage brought by this oppression. I see the photo album of my memories and recognize that my smile was always half there, but not real. And it all becomes too much. See, I reject the notion that this relationship was ever for my benefit. So I will call you out by name with no terms of endearment or forgiveness. Racism, misogyny, white supremacy, capitalism, bigotry, rape, genocide, exploitation, and all your relatives on your bloodstained family tree. I see you for who and what you are. And I say to you in a loud and clear voice that no matter how clever the lie you tell, it was you all along. I will not leave this legacy to my children. I will not make them believe for a moment that this has to be their truth, their life. Because my life is mine to create, and I will rise. I'm done. I'm gone. Goodbye. Thank you. So thank you for hearing that and going through that journey with me. What I come to you today is I'm bringing forth the concept of Sankofa, which is a African principle that thinks about how we have to look back in order to be able to move forward, right? We can't forget both where we came from, the lessons that we learned, the things that are immediately in our periphery in order to see a future. We have to create futures that are unwritten yet, right? Like Adrienne Marie Brown talks about, how all organizing is science fiction because we are literally creating worlds that don't exist in our minds around what we want to see and the visions we want to create. So the United Nations uses a really great definition of what they believe are the tenets of geographic and regular justice in the world, justice overall. And so access to justice is defined as the ability for people to seek and obtain a remedy through formal or informal institutions of justice for grievances and compliances with human right standards, right? There is no access to justice where citizens, and especially marginalized peoples, fear the system. They see it as alien and do not have access to it, where the justice system is financially inaccessible, where individuals have no lawyers, where they do not have information or knowledge of their rights, where there's a weak justice system. And we live in a state that has the highest rates of black males incarcerated per capita and the third highest of African Americans incarcerated in the nation. And this is a state that has been reported that black youths are held in juvenile detention centers at 4 times the rate of white children. And that youth who are confined to our juvenile detention centers are reported to have a recidivism rate of 50% or higher, right? So we're building a very clear school to prison pipeline. And so in the brilliant minds and the hearts of the people that are here today, we feel that our criminal justice system is broken. That's why we're here, right? And deep down, I know you believe that as a core thought, a core principle, a guiding star. And so I have multiple case studies that we can talk about that talk about both geographic and racial injustice and how it plays out, which exemplifies the consequences of our failure as a society to deliver on the promise of justice for all. Now, so I've heard firsthand accounts, which you do when you're working in the communities, which you do when you are a legislator, which you do when you're an organizer. You hear stories, and I've heard accounts of multiple individuals who have no prior records before they moved here, who are now on a regular hit list for police, and are now under constant state supervision of their lives. So police greet them in passing with really infantilizing kind of phrases like, staying out of trouble these days. These are folks who are seeking a basic human experience. And they believed that there was going to be something better here than where they may have come from. I hold in the heart a family of African American folks, in particular a friend who's a nurse, who also holds a master's in criminal justice. And she works 2 jobs to care for her kids. She was facing a jury trial on false charges brought by the most problematic prosecutor in the state. This woman, whose family has contributed greatly through generations to the community, worked in advocacy for some of the most vulnerable, was facing jail time for a crime that she never committed. DCF even attempted to open an investigation against her on child abuse, which is often a tool of terror for many, and especially people of color, who cannot afford to have an attorney on retainer. I hold the heart of an African American man who was wrongfully convicted and who served prison time. The charges that were orchestrated in the court with a corrupt police department, a vengeful, manipulative prosecutor, and a completely inept judicial system that has not yet begun to understand the contributions of how unchecked racial bias adds to its own dysfunction, right? His life was ruined. His name is forever smeared. You Google, and you will only see negative about this person. But that isn't even his story in particular. It's one that mirrors so many more that I know of personally. I hold the heart of a Latino child who's the same age as my own son, who was ripped from his mother, withheld from his grandmother, his cousins and other family who might have been better able to mitigate the trauma of the separation that the state chose to enact, rather than the problematic foster family that was racist that he was placed with. These are, when we talk about ACEs, these are the ACEs that we're studying, and we profess to fight for prevention of, but they're being committed in our names. I hold the heart even of a white mother who lost her son to the penal system because of his drug addiction. So there were no drug courts in her area or a really good alternative system. So instead, he was relegated to the hell of prison. And now released, he has to try to rebuild a life that's been torn apart and do so with a superhuman strength that no one should be asked to do. So it shouldn't be a surprise that some of these stories are coming from Bennington County. Right? Bennington County has gained a rather hefty reputation for a criminal justice system that has gone completely wrong. I know y'all remember it. You've probably seen the data. Every time I visited this school, someone approaches me about the data in Bennington County. It's the one place that, while not having the highest crime rates, sends the most amount of people to jail in the state. It also demands hold without the possibility for bail on a regular basis, coerces innocent defendants into plea bargains on a regular basis. Oh, and did I mention that the largest community in this county, Bennington, has a population of 16,000, has a police department that racially profiles at a rate higher than that of the city of Chicago? This region, which has the highest rates of families in poverty in the state, this part of the state, whenever I come here, someone draws the question, so what the hell is going on over there? These numbers don't make any sense. Yes, that county. So does this story have any relevance to the work that you're doing right now? In this community, they have extremely limited pro bono services. Extremely limited. There's no legal clinics. There's no hotlines. There are no law schools within a 100-mile radius for them to draw from. There is a handful of private defense attorneys. They're booked solid, and they often have conflicts of interest up and down, so they can't take cases anyway. So if you interface with this kind of a criminal justice system, you don't know what equal application of the law actually looks like. You will not know the meaning of justice served. It's an impossibility. And if you have not already done so, to bring in my story, I encourage you to read the Human Rights Commission investigative report on my case. It reads like a Hollywood film. I often joke it seems like a Frances McDormand kind of crazy small-town movie. It boggles the mind. My case ended in mediation, which was one of the most demeaning, humiliating, harmful experiences that a person seeking restorative justice can experience. It is a hostile space, devoid of humanity. And without courageous counsel to kind of vanguard, to actually support the people that are going through this, you will experience a re-traumatization. And in that space, my mother, my sisters, my nieces, my nephews, my in-laws, they saw the municipality come to the table with the starting offer of $30,000. $30,000. The people of Bennington deputized their leadership and their legal counsel to deliver that message to my family and to all other people of color. The public said, we trust that those in the room are going to do their due diligence to represent us well and to do what's right and just and to enter what would be supposed to be a good faith negotiation. But instead, it came back with that disgraceful offer. 8 hours later, we came out defeated and accepted an award of $130,000. So after legal fees, that would distribute to the same starting point of $30,000 for myself, $30,000 for my spouse, $30,000 for my son. Our lives upended. Years of therapy and mental distress that we are still going through, financial hardship, lack of safety, racial harassment, violation of our civil rights, direct malfeasance on the part of the police and the prosecutors, discrimination through the town manager and state attorney, they all still remain in their exact same places of power. All of them. Zero repercussions. Zero remand. Nothing. They blatantly violated civil rights, then proceeded to violate the settlement terms, and even the community benefit portions, which I built in, they have not been held up in good faith and what the spirit of the demands were. But no one will step up to hold them accountable. Justice delayed remains justice denied. And so worse still, I want to just name that this started a trend that we have seen. $30,000 is a pretty good touch point. If you want to know what will happen once you go through a process of filing a complaint and trying to get to a point of resolution, that's you're going to see about $30,000 to $45,000. A year's worth of tuition at some schools. And it stayed the threshold to place a valuation on Black lives. So if you want to do the math, yeah, it's less than the valuation of the life of an enslaved Black person in today's dollars. Sit with that. Recognize the message that that sends to people across the globe about what our justice system looks like here in Vermont. And if we're to champion justice, we have to look critically at what factors led us to this moment where these rights keep getting violated in our name and in our state. And these acts are committed in the name of public safety and law and order for a largely unknowing populace who need to trust and rely on these systems for care, for their stories, and to uphold their humanity. And we're failing them. We are telling them that their lives are unimportant and too costly to be concerned with. So what is the ultimate message for a criminal justice system that relies on our neglect for its continuance? The few places where the public has an opportunity to directly impact the systems are rigged to concentrate power. How are the people supposed to fight back when they're subject to such unchecked oppression? How are they to find the courage to tell their stories when the repercussions are so intense? How will they swallow the guilt of a plea deal when they see the few examples of those who actually made it through without having to sacrifice years to find peace and to find justice? And where are the attorneys who are willing and ready to do the work of defending civil rights, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary? Vermont is still woefully bereft of attorneys of color who are more likely to take on civil rights litigation. I have yet to see any intentional efforts to fast-track bar admittance for out-of-state jurists who are willing to do the work and come here with the high volume of complaints that are existing right now. These folks will never see justice. So where are the distorted justice practices beyond our classrooms and crash courses? They're functionally unavailable for people who need them, for those who do not trust the criminal justice system and would like to see a practice that's more relevant for their lived experience, for their cultural experiences, their ways of being. These things are functionally unavailable to the very people who need them and who the courts are more likely to fail them. So we need more activist attorneys to do this work. And so I'm going to lift up the name and tell the story of an amazing person. His name is Alexander Polikoff, whose work, tenacity, and courage fundamentally changed housing rights in the United States all the way to today. So one little piece you may not know about my family is that we were part of a project called the Gautreaux Project. And this happened because there was a lawsuit by a woman named Dorothy Gautreaux who sued the city of Chicago saying that segregated housing and public housing was violation of her civil rights. A young 39-year-old attorney, Alexander Polikoff, who was a volunteer from the ACLU, decided to take on this case. This case went on to not only desegregate housing, but to create a system that we now know as Section 8. I bring up his story because he got into this fight with no money, no prospects, no guarantee of a huge award at the end, but a recognition that something needed to be done. And this was in 1966 that he started this lawsuit. It took 52 years to settle the agreement. They were hoping he would be dead. He's not. He's living in New Hampshire. He's a great guy. You can look him up. He's got a new book coming out. You can probably bring him here. Super, super sweet. They were hoping he would die before the settlement went through, before they actually finished the entire process. 52 years. I'm not asking any of y'all to do 52 years. We're just trying to get a couple folks to do 2. Maybe like if y'all could just hang like a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And so as students, I got to ask you these questions, the disconnections, the disparities. Where are you in the conversations? What crucial information that you have that could spur change could be revealed if you were to ask them in a public forum like a select board meeting? How will you affect the Black and brown exodus that's happening right now because there's no places of peace or rest in the workplace, in the home, in the schools, in our communities, where folks that are forced into marginalization are encountering violations of their civil rights every day? right? So as faculty, I'm also gonna put it on y'all to ask, as I have one of the most infamous cases of this type in this state, where was the law school to support our needs? Why was this institution not an obvious first step to go to try to get the support as a point of contact? And if we wish to create a society where there are no wrong doors, this home needs to be one of them doors. And that door was invisible. In the last 5 days, I've had 8 different emails come across my path from listservs and places that I'm on where people are desperately asking for help. They got cases. They got cases. They need help. And that help is not to be found. We're sending them to the Human Rights Commission, who is underfunded and understaffed. They can go to the ACLU. It's going to take about 3 to 5 years because they're overloaded. But some of these cases could move more quickly, and I'm happy to talk about solutions around that afterwards, to not get too detailed into like, this is what we can do. But I got some thoughts, having been through this. So we know what inaction does. We know what inaction looks like and feels like. We understand that very clearly in our bones. That's why you're here. So we know what that abuse of the judicial system can look like, and we know exactly what the repercussions of racialized oppression and violence will do to our society. So my question to you today is, what will you do? Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi, so my name is Maylee. I think my question is more so I'm hearing that like there's a need for like minority attorneys, because that's also where you're able to like connect with clients that are being stereotyped and harassed essentially. And being so I'm Latina, and being in Vermont for the past almost 3 years, and I'm from New York, has been very different. Like I've experienced more racism here than I ever have back home. So I think a big, like something that stops a lot of students who maybe had the idea of possibly staying in Vermont to practice is their lived experiences here throughout the 3 years. So I think my question is more so how do we in general, and also including the law school, kind of make this an effort of having and protecting the students that have this desire to stay in Vermont and like fix the broken system, while also realizing that a lot of us kind of lost hope very early on because of the lived experiences while being here. So it's kind of like you want to help, but at the same time I want to protect myself because I know how isolating and how like hurtful a lot of the experiences have been.
So it really is around being in community. And when I say that, it's not just a generic thing like, do you know your neighbor? But when you leave, you then leave everybody else behind to have to fight their own battles, or to not, right? There are ways to work collaboratively. Collective power is what gives you real power. That is actionable power. Something as simple as, so for example, I don't know if anybody's reviewed the Taisha Green case yet. It's going to be coming up. They will be filing. And I name that to say that even if you just watched it on the news, everybody knew that case was like, oh no, that's like, yeah, they got a case. There's no question they have a case. There was not a single lawyer in Vermont that would take her case. Not one. Until my friend did. But she doesn't have a team. She hasn't got a whole law firm of clerks to help her collate all the information she's going to need. And there's a lot of information to sort through. So that case is going to be delayed for months and months, while somebody going through an active trauma has to try to collect, coalesce, and pull together their own damn case. Whereas if you get a group of 5 students to come together and say, we want to try to help and support in this way, it makes the load easier. You're building community and we're seeing each other. Because one of the things I have seen that came from my story, and I'm not going to say that I'm the only isolated thing, but it was an absolute touch point, is that the communities of color in this state have come together in a way that you will not see anywhere else. There are places that have long had solidarity. They may have had Black and brown solidarity. They may have had identity and affinity spaces. They may have had those groups. That didn't exist here. It does now in a powerful way, which is why I'm seeing 8 emails in a week, because people are saying, oh my gosh, there are people. Can anybody help? So I say that to say you are not alone. We understand your experiences are the experiences of everyone else. Your experiences here are the same ones kids at UVM are going through, the ones that are over at Castleton, the ones at Bennington College. They're all feeling it, right? And so you find that space of peace. You find that healing in community in that way. So I would encourage to just think about that. It makes it just feel easier. Like, why would we stay if we know that we're not going to be protected? We've lost so much talent in this state, so much talent. I'm tired of saying goodbye. I'm tired of saying goodbye to brilliant individuals who say it's not worth it because they felt alone when we were like, but we're here. But we're all here. And not everybody can do legal work. Some folks can only do mutual aid and make you meals. Hey, it's a meal while you're going through papers. It's something, I'll take your kid out to play. This is how we think about it. It's a collective work that we have to do. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you for your response. That was really enlightening. So I'm still trying to formulate my question, but I think I have a bottom line. I kind of want to give some. I resonate so much with what you've said so far because I've lived in Vermont at this point for about 4 years now, and I took a year off from going to this institution because of the struggle of just not only living here, but of also just the struggles of, struggling with just mental health and being a person of color in a place like this. There's just so many different things I was trying to overcome. But before I left school, I actually worked for the Vermont Human Rights Commission for a summer after my first year. Very important work, critical work, very interesting. I think there's this interesting opportunity that you have in Vermont because, like you said, you can knock on the door and really get something done if you want to get it done. But then you have the people who are the voices in those rooms being very specific kind of people. Mm-hmm. They live by a certain creed, mm-hmm. and if they don't hear, the voice of reason that doesn't agree with that narrative, they don't care. And I start to see that indifference, not only in those spaces, but then I come to my institution. I love everybody in this room, I'm glad that we can come together. But there is specifically a general indifference at this institution for conversations that don't comport with the white image of environmental law, essentially. They don't see environmental justice as being a critical aspect of this institution. And I know a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't know, but the reality is that there are clinics here that do not intentionally get funded because they center Black and brown communities and the issues that they face on an environmental level, but because certain people who write the checks or push the buttons don't see that as agreeing with our board of trustees, they don't prioritize that work. So that work goes away. If it goes anywhere at all, it doesn't stay here. So you attract a body of students now who they don't care. I'm gonna keep it a stack. They just don't care. And what I'm beginning to see now, if there isn't now with the affirmative action decision in this country have been struck down, if there isn't an intentional effort on a state legislature to set aside funds to require, or support private institutions to bring in those legal minds, they're not going to come here because even now, even the what is it called? The pipeline program that existed here before to bring those people that look like us, it doesn't exist anymore. And now, from what I understand, there's people who are trying to address that, but you have the people who created the problem trying to address the problem mm-hmm. with their ideas. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So basically, that's another waste of time. Mm-hmm. So what I'm wondering is there a cutout or a collaboration that can be had with different community organizations, different constituents, to have the legislature have something on the books for, you know, requiring whether it's a pipeline program, whether it's having those voices, you know, be funded to come here, to have those students being supported to come to this, because unless you require it at this point or mandate it, I really don't see the opportunity presenting itself. I think people here really try,
Right.
but there's so many disconnected pieces that it's like you're trying to clean up the mess while there's already more, you know, sewage piling up. So I had to be really frank. I'm not a person who beats around the bush. My question is really, is there a cutout or any space in Vermont for a real initiative to bring the minds, those legal minds that you're talking about here?
So there's a few different things that I think you're telling your truth and as well as asking the question are touching. The bad news is the state is scared. It's just like the regular legal community here. They are scared of losing. They have a fear of losing. So if the Supreme Court has come up with a decision that undermines our civil rights and undermines our good work, they're going to still kind of march to that beat. While they do have the ability to codify in certain ways, there will be a hesitancy because of a fear of litigation. Your strongest advocates, general counsel is, the administration is rough. They're not your allies. The best allies you're going to get come from Charity Clark, come from your attorney general, to be quite real. The general counsel works at the pleasure of the governor, to be very real. And the governor has conservative views that don't necessarily, while he can sometimes touch on some equality issues, that's not his area of strength, shall we say. So I've seen that happen. We're seeing things getting undermined right now. If you look at what happened with ethnic and social equity in schools, and I'm going to come back to environmental law in a minute, but if you look at what happened with ethnic and social equity in schools, we had a huge battle when we were trying to pass that because they were worried about a constitutional question being raised. And it was gutting for the grandmothers and the mothers and the folks who had tried to pass this, to say we need to build in standards, much like what you're asking. What are the ways that we can codify to ensure that it stays? Ensures that we're thinking of that. So when you're talking about a process to try to pull in, I don't believe that the state thinks that there is a problem around our access to justice as far as the legal community is concerned. That's why I took it myself, and I think you all had Mia Schultz here a few weeks ago. We approached the Vermont bar, like, what are you doing? Like, actually, it's on y'all, actually. And what happened is that the labor was put on us to try to come up with the solutions. Rather than them seeing that this is an important piece, it's a key part of how the state needs to function, it's a necessity to meet the gaps in our system, it was placed on us, and that's why it did not move forward. So in the area of environmental law, we know how the big greens work. They are white and they are male. And some of our best large national organizations are problematic as heck. That is the reality of the way that climate justice is working. And so thinking about they don't even have procedural justice in how they function as organizations, let alone a praxis for saying this is what environmental justice means. There's a lot of lip service. What I will say to that when you're saying how to help or where to interface, there needs to be a visibility. There are a ton of folks who have various marginalized identities that are on an environmental justice advisory council through the state. It came through the environmental justice bill that Senator Kiah Morris passed. That group needs help. They need help. They need help. They need help. I lasted a whole 2 meetings on that group. Came out with a migraine, okay? So after we had spent years telling them this is what's needed, they said, what should we do? And so the folks that have stepped up and said, I will put myself in the firing line, I will be in this really uncomfortable space, I'm gonna be in this place where I'm gonna be dealing with systemic racism, where I'm gonna hear the silencing of my voice because my experiences are not gonna be felt, where we've seen our indigenous leaders that have been a part of these processes through the Climate Council and everything else being pushed out. They said, I'll take that chance. And they're drowning. So, again, the proof comes from the work. And I know it seems hard, and I don't mean to place that all on y'all, but your average citizen can only do so much. Your activists on the ground can only do so much. I do want to throw a quick shout out for a few groups that could be helpful to connect up with. If you are not familiar with the Vermont Relief Collective, they are a specific group for folks that identify as people of the global majority or BIPOC that are working on environmental justice issues, everything from food and land sovereignty to addressing our climate crisis. And that's community, 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 like in ways you can't even imagine. So if you are not familiar with them, find them on socials, find them on the web, get on their list, come, show up, do the things, okay? That I would suggest them. The People of Color, Professionals of Color Network is working on some pieces to try to help support getting people connected up to different organizations and entities. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that has been my experience, is that the state is always reticent to do that which they feel that there will be a challenge. And that's generally just a reticence that happens throughout the legal community here. They're just, if it's not a slam dunk, if it's not an easy win, they're scared. And we have to tell them, you have to have the same courage that we do. Because we came here, you came here to say, I want to make a difference. And that took courage. So you have to say, where's yours? I'm going to hold a mirror. That's all I got. Sorry. I'm sorry, I wish I had something better.
Hi, Kiah. It's so good to see you again. So Kiah was one of the very first people who I met when I think I met you when I'd been in Vermont for like 2 days at the Vermont EJ Summit. Mm-hmm. And y'all were like, this is not how it usually is. It was like this beautiful summit full of people of color. And it was such a beautiful way to kind of ease my transition into the state. But I have not been in a community like that since then. So definitely skewed my expectations a tiny bit, but yeah, I just wanted to give you some appreciation, and also wanted to respond a little bit to, I really appreciate you calling out just the lack of resources for environmental justice in the school. I also wanted to say that we're in the very early phases of offering legal support through the Environmental Justice Clinic for the Vermont EJ Council, so that relationship has been established and is kind of we're navigating the state bureaucracy at the moment, but hoping that that'll be a place where we can offer support. But yeah, I just really appreciate your leadership in the state, and as the only Indigenous faculty member at the school coming from southern New Mexico, it's meeting people like you and having Lisa Dean Ryan here at the school has just made a huge difference. I'm just really appreciative of everything you've shared.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm happy to connect with folks later about more groups that you probably should connect with. It'll make it feel a lot less lonely.
Hi, my name's Maggie, and I've lived in Vermont like 2 years now, but my parents also moved from where we're originally from, so considering making it a permanent home, we'll see. I was wondering if you have any experience in spaces about alternatives to policing in the state, because at least the sentiment that I'm getting is that there's a very sentiment that crime is increasing in the state, and that there's been bills introduced in the legislature in this session to make it easier to arrest people, basically, and certain crimes like shoplifting, increasing the minimum amount of money that something's worth in order to press certain charges, just increasing the penalties for certain sorts of crimes as well. So I was wondering if you have any experience or any thoughts on the policing and the tough on crime wave that we're experiencing in the state right now.
So it really isn't a new wave. It had to pause. They had to be quiet for about a year or two. I'd give them maybe 2 years. That's being really generous. So what we saw happen across the nation, obviously, was the defund the police kind of conversations that were really we need an alternative policing. Carceral system is not the way to resolve our societal problems. It's not the way to help support and lift up folks from what we are criminalizing, poverty, essentially. We're criminalizing skin, we're criminalizing religion, we're criminalizing all sorts of things. So that work is there. The research has already been done. The proposals have already been submitted. This has been summarily rejected. So what's happening right now that we are like this much past the Black Lives Matter movement, this much past George Floyd, Sandra Bland, all this much past it, there is what we're calling a backlash or a blacklash, where everything is going back 360. So it is giving where there might have been police that probably weren't even really reporting criminality in the way that they were, there's a very concerted effort to show that police are desperately needed in these roles, what have not been trained out of their warrior mentality. So it just creates an easy access for them to go backwards. All of the training that can take place is really challenging. You're trying to undo a system that even if someone comes out with the best of training, they get into these departments and it goes out the window because they immediately have to function and immediately have to change to that culture. There is no grace period, right? The alternatives to policing are some of the same ones that we need in our community, that police officers themselves need. Thinking about the fact that law enforcement are basically on a consistent tour of duty with no breaks. And that does a lot to your mental health. That does a lot to your own sense of safety. That does a lot to your critical thinking skills. It does a lot to an individual. So the same things that we're saying everyday people need, those are human beings too that also have needs. I am definitely not a fan of law enforcement. They were a group that I worked very closely with. I was on the Special Investigations Unit when I was in Bennington County, working specifically with the law enforcement and the courts, helping women in flight and families that were in flight. And so I was a part of that whole team and had to build a trust after years of trauma. And obviously my experience kind of removed police from being a part of my public safety equation. So there is a lot of really great examples out there already. And they were presented and then nothing happened. Even in my own case, the community benefit pieces that I spoke of, one was a legal clinic. I wanted a legal clinic that the town had to pay rent on, that the community members could go to. I wanted a space where anyone who wants to provide pro bono legal services could meet up with community members. They do have a space. It's at the Welcome Center on the highway exit, so you can't get there. And then they made it sound as though it was just for legal aid who doesn't have the capacity to staff it instead of for anyone who might have a need to meet with clients. I also asked for a police oversight commission, which has been delayed so long that it is ineffective. They already are being sued because they released information about a complainant that then put their life at risk. So they can say they've done these changes, but they have not. And that's not just Bennington. You will find this happening across the state. It's, I don't, yeah, sorry. I wish I had good news, but like there's great things happening in the world of the justice system.
Well, hello, my name is Miriam.
Hello, Miriam.
And I had a question about how to maintain motivation, like in a room full of young lawyers to be, and in learning more about the criminal legal system, to me, it becomes really clear that the system itself isn't broken because it works exactly the way it's meant to work. And going in it with that perspective makes you feel like there's just a few cracks that you need to fix, when really it's a whole systemic issue from top to bottom. And there's much more energy needed to fix a systemic issue. And as someone who's had to spend a lot of time within the legal system, how have you found the motivation, or if there's any words of wisdom that you can share with us to keep that motivation, because it is such a long-winded fight?
It is, but know that you're standing on the shoulders of your ancestors who have done so much. They've been through they've had to walk miles barefoot. They've had to overcome all kinds of adversity. Y'all got this. And understand that, again, if you go, there's somebody else that's still going to have to keep on, they got to keep on fighting. That fight does not stop. It's just whether or not somebody's fighting in isolation or if they're fighting in community. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. So, I mean, it's not to say that you are not important and your presence is not felt. Your presence is precious. But there are going to be people that are going to keep on fighting to their death, to their detriment, the detriment of their health, the detriment of their families, the detriment of their livelihoods. They're going to keep doing it. So we can make it easier or we can make it harder for everybody. That is what I will say. I think that there's great hope. Again, I mean, I'm not asking you to put in a 52-year battle on anything, unless that's what it means for you, because that's what it meant for him. And he Yeah, that's what it meant for him to do that. He wasn't going to stop. He said, I'm not going to stop until it's done. And then he stopped, and then he moved to New Hampshire. So and, he deserves that now, I think. So to say, like, I know it feels tough, but that is the reality of life. And I want to say that the people that live here in Vermont, their lives matter, and they're precious, and they deserve dignity. They deserve justice. So we're going to keep trying to fight for that for those folks as long as we can, until we can't. So stick around.
Does anyone else have questions?
It'll be good. It'll be great.
Great.
Go for it.
Greetings. My name is Kyle.
Hello, Kyle.
I just moved here about a week ago. I'm from Georgia.
Welcome.
And
Winter.
sorry.
Winter.
Right. I love it though. I came with my boots. I'm ready. Hearing you today, I read up on you before I came here and your endeavors and your triumph also. I would ask, as an African American, what would you say would be the first push or would be the first step to take, to challenge the adversity that you've named, not only in the criminal justice system, but also in terms of social justice, and environmental justice, and all of the many different facets that you said is needed?
The first thing I would say, and I keep saying it, and maybe this will get a little bit more, maybe I can get better about explaining it, is being in community. Because we need healing right now. We need healing. And so there are groups like Relief, there's groups like Unlikely Writers, there are groups like Joy Writers. There are so many different entities that have popped up in the last few years where you have a chance to see yourself. People's kids can see other kids that look like them. They're able to be in community and have these spaces that are about healing first. And many of these organizing entities, that is the first point. It's not come to a meeting. It's come to our potluck. It's we got free tickets to this concert. Come check out the show. It's come find your joy. Okay, now let's get to work. So I don't want to diminish the fact that we just are here to work, because we do. That's innate. We have to find our joy and we have to find our healing. So yeah, everything from free yoga to free massages. Like, I'm just saying, y'all, like, you don't get that other places. Free CSAs, you don't get that other places, but you'll get that here. She's like, what? Yeah, free CSAs is dope. It's pretty dope. So yeah. Yes. It's the best place ever.
Got me a little scared there.
I'm just keeping it real.
Well,
I'm from Chicago, so like, it's all relative.
So, and given that we've established that, to add a bit of context to it, I'm from the South, so you're pretty aware that it's home of form of segregation, racism, the height of all of that, and so even today I still see it. I say, for being from Georgia, we have those services, strong NAACP, legal services, legal clinics, et cetera, et cetera. So my question to you now here is that here, or is it not implemented as it should be, or in comparative to the South, given the struggles that we've had? And so, yeah, my question would be, once those groups are formed, what would be the first step you take? Is it getting black lawyers here? Is it going towards the General Assembly and making a petition? You following me?
You have to go with a multiple-pronged strategy, as well as an inside-outside strategy. So you have folks that are champions on the inside of in these decision-making places and policy places that can help you with that. You do need to have organizing power on the outside. The other piece I will say to this, though, our NAACP here is robust. The New England chapter does not support Vermont. They do not see Vermont as important. Perhaps if the students of color or other students and allies from Vermont Law School wrote them a letter, we could get some money, because there is money. They got funds. The NAACP has legal funds. They will not send them to Vermont. And I don't know if Mia talked about that at all, but the dossier she's got is massive. It's overwhelming. And all they can do is say, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. So, again, organizing power in community. I would love that. Can I look to you to help make that?
We'll
Somebody
talk.
help this brother out here. Somebody help this brother get a letter going. I'm gonna get some signatories on that piece. It's a community share kind of agreement. It's where you get vegetables and milk and eggs and food and
We do them here, I think. Yeah, the Food and Ag Law Society. Oh.
sorry,
okay.
I got alphabet soup.
That's why I got really happy.
We only had one black chiropractor. They're gone in the whole state of Vermont. They lasted 3 weeks. They could have used a lawyer. Anyway, you see what I'm saying? People are trying. They just don't have the support they need. Any other? I'm happy to answer any other questions as well. Oh, great.
I was wondering, I think I got the feeling that like you think law students should be more involved in the things that are going on in the state of Vermont.
Correct.
And I guess my question is, I mean, you gave lots of examples already, but what do you think are like some of the main like priorities that things that we can get involved in?
I would take a look at, you got to see what sparks your interest. So again, and I'm not trying to use just Bennington as like a punching bag, although they deserve it, but so when you were going through and you were finding out, you're seeing, looking at what's happening with the numbers and the trends, start asking really curious questions, and then go to the communities and say, I need to talk to some folks, not the people in power. You need to talk to some folks and find out what is needed. Right? We're never going to parachute down. We're never going to just kind of show up and be like, hey, this is what you need. We're going to go door to door and ask, what do you need? And then we can build that out. So that's just the important piece of that organizing. So that's what I would say. I'm not going to give you a direct answer because each community might have different needs. Somebody might need you in the schools more than they need you in the courts. Somebody might need you with an employer that's really problematic more than they need you, in other spaces. So. Thanks for asking. Do you have a request? Okay. Okay, so, yes. No, it's totally fine. So, you want a poem about joy? Yeah. You're like, look, things kind of rough right now. All right, I have a piece. How about one called Exponential Love? It's going to get a little spicy at first, so stay with me. I can't help but trip and fall over your energy, they say in an exasperated but gleeful tone, each word delivered through sighs of ecstasy and surrender. It just spills over and covers me. That is how a lover once described my essence as I kissed and caressed their adoring face, following a most rapturous joining of our souls. This energy, this loving energy that rushed forth after being dammed up against its will out of preservation, soaking our bodies, the sheets, the bed, the room, that space with pure love. Tired and worn from too many days witnessing too many man-made deaths, from the front lines of the Sisyphean work that they do every day to care for the world, they needed replenishing, and I needed releasing. They needed healing. We all do from time to time. So I was born a healer. It's part of my unique purpose. So I opened my wellspring of divine, fulfilling, compassionate love to lighten their heart and sent them back out into the world to do more good. This love, their love, my love, something birthed in my soul before I was even born. Imprisoned in a physical environment so embattled and traumatized that it recoiled from its charge to nurture my body. A woman's heart, broken and discarded, asked to create a most precious gift of love, a life, another loving spirit to share with the world. This body would struggle to care for the delicate child within, and the pain of the world would invade the protection of the womb and seek to destroy me. A disorder, a deadly but common black mother's prenatal disorder, became the marching orders in a fight for survival between both mother and child, a war between heaven and hell, and the casualties could be exponential. Only grace could save us both. The mixed signals told her body that I was a foreign invader that needed to be extinguished, and my spirit wrapped itself in a cocoon of love and light and held on to the promises of providence to survive the onslaught. And when nothing more could be done, both of us barely holding on to this plane, we were pulled from the wreckage, mother and daughter, separated for days, weeks, months to heal. A delicate life seeking the physical comfort of her mother, her touch. My heart began to pulse out love songs to the universe. My cries vibrated rhapsodic, loud and clear, messages of love like a beacon in the vast isolation to draw others to my light. Undaunted, unaware of my supernaturally small size, ignorant to the natural rules that empirically predicted me dead, my voice would blast through the plexiglass prison walls with resounding force. And those who heard it believed it to be the definitive hand of God touching their hearts, drawing them to me. And I would give them my love, and their hearts would lighten. And so it would go on into infinity, my mission to give mighty love, to love fully, freely, fearlessly. I love you, I would say to the nurse as she used warm scraps of fabric to swaddle my small body. I love you, I would say to my sisters who nearly lived their greatest fear as they watched their mother struggle to breathe, heart still shattered into a million pieces, too physically weak to comfort them or assure them in the ways that mothers naturally do. I love you, I would say to my sister's father upon his release from prison. His hardened face turned tearful as I wrapped my small fingers around the palm of his hand. His own daughters, too stunned to articulate the fear and elation of having their father back into their lives. After so many years, I would be the conduit for their love. I love you, I would say to the boy from across the street when I used my body as a shield between him and the bullies who tortured him so much that he would wet his pants in fear, even though his father called me a nigger. I love you, I'd say to my friend's little brother every time I visited their home. I always sat down next to his wheelchair decorated with tubes and machines, conversing with a boy whose bodies robbed him of mobility and normal speech with every visit. We'd talk about the day, movies we loved, and Power Rangers. He would laugh and smile, and his mother reflected her love in the warm tears that silently fell down her flushed cheeks while she watched us. I love you, I said to my best friend as I held her tightly through wrenching sobs. See, my family was too poor to send me on the class trip, so I stayed behind and did busy work on the half-empty school while my friends were away. She told me about how they placed her in the same room as the rich, mean girls who mocked and insulted her and forced her to sleep on the floor. My love could not protect her from such cruelty. I love you, I said to my mother as I mopped her sweat-soaked brow. Once again, death would call her name, but I cared for her through my fears and the painful battles with my sisters who still carried the ghosts of their childhood nightmares of losing her, and they directed their tears at me. She would pull through. That divine love healed her. I love you, I shouted as I waved goodbye to my ex. Their deep, dark, unrelenting depression robbed them of their life, their ability to love and to see me, and I gave and gave my love in a million ways, hoping that this love would make a connection, would overcome the ever-present adversity that obscured and destroyed our love. I was spent, depleted, and undone. And to love them, I needed to have them go find their own path. But to heal myself, I needed to love myself enough to let them go. I love you, I whispered to our friend as he lay in his deathbed, family too distraught to function, bereaved at the mere thought of losing him. Calm and steady, I comforted him to accept the life-giving tube and to carry on until he was ready to don his angelic wings. He would steal another 3 Christmases and birthdays, long enough to ensure that his daughter's eyes would be the final vision that he carried with him into heaven. I would repeat those words to my granddaddy during our final telephone conversation. I let him know that our love was eternal and that it was okay to rest and to be free of pain. We would all be okay. I promised him. We would never stop loving one another. So I never fear loving or telling others that I love them, as it's infinite energy. It's transferable energy. It's the natural order. I wrap my love around my son. I pledge my love to my partner. I share my love with my work and my art. I nurture my love with my family and exemplify my love with my friends. But most importantly, honor that my love never belonged to me. It is but on loan from God. And with this poem, I now give this love to you. Please, use it generously. Thank you.
Does anyone else have, that was lovely, by the way. Does anyone else have questions that they'd like to ask? Okay.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for believing in the work that you do. Thank you for staying in the fights that you're in. Thank you.